Joining us today, folks. Thanks for joining us. My name is Councilmember Richardson, and you are joining us today for a community conversation called COVID-19 and the Black community. I'm here with my family, my wife Nina, Alina, my 5-year-old, and then this is Mila making faces over here, my 3-year-old. I'm just going to kick off the conversation, and then I'm going to hand it over to Long Beach City Council member, 8th District, Al Austin, who's going to facilitate a great conversation on family, and I'm going to watch it here with my family. Just a little bit of context here. So we kicked off this conversation a week ago, focused on economics and health, disparities and equity. And we all know and understand that this has been an ongoing conversation about the disproportionate impact of this coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic on the African American community. And this is really a forum for us to come together and continue to talk and keep the conversation going around strategies and solutions, coping skills and tips to help make sure that our families have the best shot as possible to make it through this global pandemic. I want to thank a few partners. First, it's the Long Beach Center for Economic Inclusion and their entire board of directors, including Sharon Diggs-Jackson, who's a part of the committee who helped pull this together. There's also been a number of great committee members helping make this happen. Pastor Gregory Sanders of the Rock Ministries, as well as Long Beach Ministers Alliance, Pastor Steve Neal of the Long Beach branch NAACP, Carl Kemp of Antioch Church, Errol Parker, and a host of other guests and partners who all contributed to this effort. Before we get started, like we did last time, I would like to invite our city's health officer, Dr. Anissa Davis, to help us set some context for the conversation that we're about to have. Dr. Davis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilman Richardson. Can everyone hear me? Ooh.
Yes.
Are you guys able to hear me? Yep. Okay,
yes,
wonderful. And then you're gonna, okay, great. And yes, we're gonna get some slides. Thank you for having me. I'm going to just give some brief introductory remarks about the data regarding COVID-19 and specifically in the African American community in Long Beach, among Long Beach residents. So all the data that I'll be presenting is for folks who live in Long Beach. Next slide, please. So as of today, there have been 1,305 confirmed cases among Long Beach residents. 170 of the total 1,305 cases are in African Americans. Currently, there are 63 people hospitalized Long Beach residents who are hospitalized because of COVID-19. Of those 63, 10 are African American. There have been to date 52 people who have passed away because of COVID-19. And approximately 14 of those were African American. And there have been 848 people who have recovered from COVID-19. And as far as the total confirmed cases, it's an even split between males and females. Next slide. Thank you. So this first slide, get this close to me here. The first slide basically, so we're the light blue, so that's the one to pay attention to, the second from the bottom. And this top part is just basically saying what our rates are. So that means per 100,000 individuals, what is the rate of COVID-19? So it's a way for you to compare different populations. And so we are a little bit higher than the state of California rate, which is that bottom line. But we're lower than Los Angeles County, which is orange, and we're also lower than the city of Los Angeles, which is that top gray one. And then the bottom box basically is the cases by ethnicity or race. So the Latino population is 42% of the population. That's those dark blue bars. but they represent 50% of the total cases. Whites are 28% of the population and have 20% of the cases. Asians are 13% of the population and have 13% of the cases. African Americans are 12% of the population and 13% of the cases. Pacific Islanders are 1% of the population and 3% of the cases. So basically our rate, the number of cases in African Americans, this bottom, is what would be expected of our percent of population in Long Beach. So we're 13% of the population, and we're 12% of the population, and we're about 13% of the cases. So it's about even. Okay, next slide, please. So this just looks at our trends in hospitalization. So this top box, just look at the dark blue bars, and that just kind of tells you how many people have been hospitalized. So you can see that lately our trend has been kind of gradually going up. So something we need to be paying attention to. And then the bottom box is hospitalizations by ethnicity, race. So you can see in the Latino or Hispanic category, although Latinos and Hispanics actually had a higher number of cases relative to their population, they actually have a lower hospitalization rate. Caucasians, 28% of the population, and also a lower hospitalization rate at 22%. Asians, it's 1% greater. And African Americans, this is where you can start to see the disparities. So we're 12% of the population in Long Beach, and yet we represent 17% of those who are hospitalized. So some of the reasons that have been hypothesized for this has been that African Americans are disproportionately affected with underlying health conditions that put us at higher risk for having severe disease, such as heart problems, lung problems, diabetes, things like that. Pacific Islanders are 1% of the population, but 3% of the hospitalizations. They're also seeing disparities in the Pacific Islander population, and they're looking at that at the state to get higher numbers where they'd be able to see the differences more. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is the trends in deaths per 100,000 among Long Beach residents. So the top slide is that rate again per 100,000. And we're the light blue, so we're right in the middle. So our trends, our death rate is higher than the state of California, but much lower than that of Los Angeles County, which is the orange. And then when you look at that bottom box, this is by ethnicity and race in Long Beach. So Hispanics or Latinos make up 42% of the population, but only 19% of the deaths. Caucasians make up 28% of the population and 37% of the deaths. African Americans, the disparity has grown. We're 12% of the population, but 27% of the deaths. And then for other, it's pretty equal. So these data just highlight that we seem to be contracting COVID at about the same rate. However, African Americans are suffering more severe illness. We're more likely to be hospitalized and more likely to die from this disease than our other counterparts. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I have to tell you, these numbers and these statistics from the first time we hosted this conversation to now, we have death data that we didn't have available and wasn't presented on last time. I think it really underscores, thank you, you get a popsicle. It really underscores why it's important that we have this conversation when we make up just around 12% of the city's population, but 27% of the fatalities related to COVID-19. So if anyone's wondering why are we having a series of conversations about COVID-19 in the Black community, the answer is because this is essential to life and death, and we want to make sure that we are preparing our communities with what the information they need in order to cope and make it through. So thank you, Dr. Davis. We will make sure that a copy of this data is shared with all who signed in. And so at this point, without further ado, we're going to jump right into the conversation. We have an esteemed group of panelists today, and I won't jump ahead of my colleague, Councilman Austin's tremendous introduction, but we are tremendously fortunate to have a panel of really incredible speakers today. And it'll be facilitated and moderated by Councilman Al Austin, who has a tremendous track record in the community, has an amazing family, and our committee, truly felt he was the best person to facilitate this conversation, given his track record and his knowledge and engagement around this issue. So without further ado, it's my honor to introduce Councilman Al Austin, our moderator for COVID-19 in the Black community.
Thank you, Rex, and hello, family. You guys look beautiful. Can everybody hear me okay?
All right. We hear you great, Councilman.
Yes, and I also want to thank Dr. Anissa Davis for the great data shared with us today. It's very sobering every time we hear that information. We get it on a daily basis, and it is very, like I said, very sobering to hear those numbers. Literally more than 1 in 4 deaths in the city of Long Beach are somebody from the Black community, and that should be an alarming number, and it shows that this issue has greater risk for some and greater impacts on our community than others. Also want to thank the Long Beach Economic Inclusion Center for Economic Inclusion for the invite to participate today. I want to thank District 9 staff and everybody who has been involved in helping to facilitate this discussion. A discussion oftentimes, particularly when we deal with crisis, are about disparities and outcomes. And today we have an esteemed panel, a distinguished panel of individuals who can help our families deal with some of these crises and situations that we're feeling and dealing with. We have people that are dealing with individuals in their family who have directly been impacted by fatalities due to COVID-19. We have individuals in our community who are experiencing unemployment. We have individuals in our community who are already struggling, and this pandemic and the economic calamities that are associated with this pandemic have exacerbated those stressors. And so, while in many respects, I think it can be stated that families are coming together because they are together, literally, more than normal. And I can say on my behalf, our family is closer than ever. We're doing well. Daisha is healthy and wonderful. My boys are here at home, and we're blessed. That might not be the same for every family. And so we do understand that this pandemic is having some really disastrous impacts on many folks in our community. And I think the discussion tonight is about family, faith, and education. Tonight we have an impressive panels of individuals who really exemplify those important pillars in life, right? And when we talk about inclusion, we talk about economic inclusion, we talk about life outcomes. I would say that those 3 areas that we're going to be discussing tonight, theme of tonight's conversation, family, faith, education, are so important for anyone to be able to succeed in life, right? And to have a fair chance in life. You have to have a strong family supporting you, loving you, providing you with the nurturance and support you need. You have to have strong faith, and we certainly have examples of that. And anybody that I know that has been successful in life, most of them have those pillars and those foundations. And of course, education. education is the great equalizer for any situation. And so as we talk about the issue of equity, economic inclusion, let's not forget the foundations to success. Those pillars are so important. And so we as a community are experiencing a health pandemic and an economic calamity. And our community has been especially hit hard. And the data, the numbers don't lie. The risks are higher for Black people than most other groups. And so my first guest that I'd like to introduce, and we're going to go down the line and introduce them all. We have Dr. Sandra Hardy, who is a clinical psychologist based in the Bixby Knolls area. She has over 30 years of experience helping families. I would love to be able to quantify how many people that she's helped over the course of her career. But tell us, Dr. Hardy, give us a brief introduction and give us some coping skills on how to deal with COVID-19.
Okay, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. And when you remind me that I have 30 years of experience, you remind me that I've been around for a long time. Our goal is to continue to be around and to use our wisdom to, make our community, continue to be a part of making our communities so wonderful places that those of us who are fortunate enough to be around have obviously had some connection with a lot of good people. I'm a Long Beach native. I live in Lakewood, but Long Beach is home, always will be. And I'm really glad to be here tonight. Another thing we just want to say to remind everybody that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it gives us a real good opportunity to take the time to pause for a second and just think about how well we're doing, what we're doing in our families, and just how well we're taking care of each other, and to actually stop and ask each other, how are we doing? So with that in mind, I'm going to just take a minute and have us all sit back for a minute. If you're in a place where you can sit back and relax for just 1 minute. We just want to, for 1 minute, we want to pause, take a deep breath. There are a lot of things that we don't have control over, but fortunately, even though COVID-19 is a respiratory illness, those of us who are up and about and are doing well, we still have control over our breath. So let's take a minute and all of us just do a collective inhale. Okay, let's go. And a collective exhale. That's something we can do all the time. It's with us. You can take your breath with you everywhere you go. You're in control of that. And if you can learn, or if we can learn this simple thing of just controlling our breath and teach our children. You remember how we used to tell our kids to stop and count to 10? It's something real fashionable now to talk about taking breath and meditation and controlling your breath. But it's something that we can have control over. So again, there's a lot of things we don't have control over. But hopefully as we end tonight, we'll be more in touch with some of the things we do have control over and how we can make a difference for ourselves and our families. So I have 6 points that I want to try to go through briefly. And then most of my presentation is online. We'll figure out a way to put it online and resources so you can have access to that. So the first thing I want to start with is just a reminder, as we all know, we're in a crisis and we need all hands on deck. Everybody's important. This is not business as usual. We know that if you do business as usual, what do? You get the usual business. So we want to focus on how do we do things differently and how do we take care of ourselves better. Because of this, we need to know, I want to remind, fatigue, irritability, anxiousness, sadness, anger, boredom are just are feelings that you can have, and that we want you to know that it's normal. So in an abnormal situation, it's okay, or it's likely that you're going to have some normal feelings. And we want to let you know that when they have these feelings, that it's part of being human and being a part of the experience. The question or the concern that we have is that when you start to feel feelings of distress and you notice that they're lasting for more than a day or two, and you really don't know what to do, that really is a time where you might want to reach out and ask for help. And call a friend, call a hotline, call a professional, and just let somebody else know what you're doing and how you're doing and see if there's some ways to help. Actually, one of the things that we have noticed that we have put into place is that telehealth or teletherapy is something that a lot of the rules have been relaxed, and this may be a wonderful time to think about getting into therapy or calling someone or just having a support network. It's mostly through every insurance company at this point is responsible or required to have some kind of telehealth or health in place. So this would be a wonderful time to try it. We're finding that people are really liking it. The anonymity, it's something about it that people are really liking and that they're enjoying. So let's make sure we get on the bandwagon and take care of ourselves in that regard if we have to. The other thing is asking for help, kind of dispelling some of the myths that asking for help is an act of strength and not weakness. Some of the healthiest and smartest people I know go to therapy regularly and are dealing with their life situations better as a result of it. It's okay to ask for help. The tremendous stress and fatigue and all of the energy that we're having to devote to divide or to deal with this illness, if we're not careful and we're not paying attention, what can happen is that we'll end up finding, and if it's left unchecked, that our homes can easily turn into places that we want to get away from, that we want to escape from, rather than being the place where we want to turn to for refuge, refreshment, and support. Okay. Number 3, which I think is really important, is for us to keep in mind that our children need our attention. I think it's hard for us. It's really hard for them. And unfortunately, many of the times, the way that children express their distress is in ways that also cause parents distress. You know, it's not like it's just this nice little thing. When they're under stress, they're going to present it in a way that may cause you stress too. Kids will often act out their feelings. We can notice things like kids that are shutting down or acting out through either oppositional or defiant behavior. Pay attention to any kind of sleep disturbance, tantrums, or moodiness. Regardless of age, I just want to remind you that they're not likely to come to you and tell you exactly what's going on. So if you're waiting for them to just come and say, Mom and Dad, let's sit down and have this conversation. I need you to know about something that's going on with me. It's not likely to happen. Many times they don't even know themselves. So be patient, be supportive, and listen for your name. Number 4, we need to have some ideas in place or strategies to help our children and ourselves. Here are a few things you can do to help make this whole thing go smoother. Spend as much quality time with them as reasonably possible. This can be a challenge sometimes. It really can. And as many parents will tell you, it's a challenge, but it really does work and it really does make a difference. We need to pay attention that each child is different. You want to talk to them with short and concise sentences. Ask them, what do they know or think about this current situation? What are their fears? And actually, we can even ask our kids, what do they like about this time being at home? You know, are there things they like about having mom and dad around more often, or being at home, or not having to stress out about school? A lot of kids are saying that they can't wait to get back to school. But there's some things that kids may actually even like about this time. Listen well and don't try to fix everything. Practice the good safety habits we know already, preparing our kids so they go out, they know the importance of washing their hands and wearing face masks if they have to. But all of the things that we already know, we want to send them out there prepared and ready and to know how to take care of themselves. You need to try to keep them connected to their friends and family as much as possible. Let them know you are the person who will keep them safe and help guide them through this crisis. Although you don't know all the answers, and let them know that you will do your best to provide order and directions and do as best you can whenever possible. But you're not Superman or Superwoman. You don't know everything, and that's okay. And actually, this crisis gives us an opportunity to help our children to know that these are uncertain times for sure, but it's okay to teach them that not knowing can actually lead to good outcomes sometimes, and that uncertainty is not always bad. Miracles are actually unexpected outcomes. So sometimes we feel like if we don't know everything, then we assume it's going to be bad. The law of averages said 50-50 at least. So, but uncertainty is not bad. Number 5, and this is really important for us, I think, too. We need to monitor the news and social media coverage. Be careful not to have the news as the background of your lives. So we may be saying one thing, but the news is going on behind us all the time, and our kids really are listening. I like to think that I'm careful about what I bring into my home. And that means the kind of conversations, the people, the information, that I'm selective and that you're selective about what comes into your home. So we want to also provide a good measure of positive information and activities that promote togetherness, compassion for others, and positivity. And then you want to laugh a lot. You want to play good music. You want to dance. You want to go outside. You want to teach them gratitude and thankfulness, even in a crisis, that no matter how bad it is, we are still blessed. I'm going to repeat that. No matter how bad, and it can get bad, and it's worse for some people, but how bad, no matter how bad, we are still blessed beyond measure. And then 6, you need to take care of yourself, because taking care of you as an adult takes care of other people. You want to prioritize your own self-care. So you need to get rest, eat healthy, exercise, and maintain positivity in your life and your conversations with extended families and friends. And yes, it's still important for adults to have friends, to spend time with your friends if you can. And then regarding homeschooling. We've heard a lot about how people are feeling about homeschooling and how much of a challenge it's been, both a blessing and how hard it's been. But my recommendation is that at best, you can be a good substitute teacher, okay? Or you can be the helpful, supportive room parent. But they need you more as mom and dad, more than they need you as the principal, guidance counselor, or strict demanding teacher. Take time to set your priorities. Here again, if you don't set your priorities, somebody else or something else will set them for you. You can only do what you can do. Tomorrow is a new day. And if you can stay healthy and well, you get to wake up and start all over again. Hopefully, it'll be better in the morning. Remember, weeping may endure for a night, but what? Joy comes in the morning. A good night's sleep can do wonders for your thinking and your frame of mind. And then just finally, I want to say that some of the stuff we know about ourselves and what we know about the past is that we know this too shall pass. As bad as it is and as overwhelming as it is, we're already 7 weeks into it, and we better be careful, because we'll start to forget in a minute that this is still serious and that we still are working through something very, very serious. We are resilient, we're creative, and we're make do. We know how to make do out of nothing people. I'm going to say that again, because we want to remember we're resilient. We are creative beyond measure. I'm amazed at some of the creative stuff that we do or what I've seen. And that we know how to make do out of nothing, okay? We know how to work hard and how to work together. We've come this far by faith in God, and God is still with us. Even in the midst of a pandemic, God is still with us. We know we have much more to be thankful for than we have to be afraid of. We know that there are people who are worse off than we are, and that we are expected to reach out and help. We know that business, as usual, keeps producing the same outcome, and that we have to keep the faith and keep fighting. Our hope is that you and your children and those you love will get through this with as few scars as possible. And maybe if we look hard enough, the good of this new world order, they actually prove to be better than life was before. Thank you, and we'll keep the fight. We keep working.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation and introduction, Dr. Hardy. All 6 of those points were right on point, and I'm certainly going to come back to you to follow up. I have some follow-up questions to some of your presentation, but absolutely amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so for those participating in the community and those who are watching online on Facebook and other platforms, we do encourage you to type in your questions. Your comments are always appreciated. We want to make sure that you are engaged in this and participating in this. This is an inclusive process. And we also have a poll question for those participating on the platform. And if you're on Facebook, you can type in your answer to this as well. We want to hear from the community. And so the question is, has the COVID-19 safer at home and social distancing orders created more or less stress and anxiety for you personally? And that's the question. So go ahead and vote. We'll come back. We'll give you some results of that later on. Dr. Hardy, you talked about, and in your close, you said God is still with us in a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And that's a great segue to our next guest, Pastor Wayne Chaney Jr., who is a son of Long Beach, somebody who is doing and has been doing an amazing work in our Long Beach community, but abroad as well. He's somebody who really needs no real introduction because he's out there, and that's one of the best things about him. And one thing that I admire about him, he's a tireless servant, and he's there. He's there when people aren't even watching. And so, oftentimes, when you need an encouraging word, or you'll get that phone call from Pastor Chaney just to say hello, or to help walk you through some dark times. And so we talked about family and resources for family and how to cope with COVID-19. But faith is very, very important as well. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Pastor Wayne Chaney. I first want to congratulate you and Antioch Church on the amazing new announcement. I'll go ahead and leave that open for you to tell us all about what's going on at Antioch and exciting things going on with your church. But we also understand that the Black church is going through some challenges as well, because this is the first time that the Black church itself is facing a major crisis without one of its essential parts of its legacy, its tools, and that is the ability to gather as a church, to fellowship, to pray together. How is the church, and particularly Antioch, dealing with this dynamic, Pastor? And welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Councilman Councilman Richardson, Councilman Austin, and to this distinguished group of panelists. It's just an honor to be counted in the number. So good to see all of you. I've thought about, just as the conversation began, how would I use my few minutes in the opening statement? How would I frame it? And you helped me with that. And so I'll back into it using a bit of narrative. Antioch was started about 60 years ago. Over the years, we've grown a bit, but it started with 7 people in my grandfather and grandmother's living room. That was the first church meeting. And we've had a journey. We've, in many respects, believed God for significant things, and we hope we've, over the years, inspired the city in the area of faith and just our love for people. But as I think about that and connect that to the most recent statement that you made, as you know, we've been in a journey. We needed a building probably 15 years ago. We're doing quite a few services, and Lord put it on my heart about 6 years ago now. I can't believe that much time has gone by, to put our place on the market. We thought it'd be about a month or so, before we had our next place. We put the place on the market, and it took 4 years to get a buyer, 4 years to find a building. That was a journey in and of itself. I don't know if you know what it is to live out of boxes for 4 years and still try to do effective ministry. And after that, we went into the deal for 350 Pine, the old vault building. It's turned out wonderful. It's beautiful. The only thing it's missing is the most important thing, and that is the people. But we went through, in many respects, a challenging season just on many fronts, just socially. Some of the racial implications that you think, or we know they haven't passed on, they're still here and present. And some of that reared its head in our transition. And to cut to the chase, it was a significant journey for the last 6 years. And we were 1 month away from moving into our new space there before COVID-19 hit. And quite honestly, we're resilient people. We know how to bounce back. We know how to make lemonade out of lemons. That wasn't my biggest issue. But one of the prayers I prayed as we walked that facility and we didn't know how long this would be with COVID was my heart went to those that have been on this journey with us for 40 years or longer. And my prayer to God was that some of the folks that were there and saw the humble beginnings would be able to usher into this building once it opens again. By the time I finished my prayer time that morning and got upstairs to tell my wife what I prayed to God, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and announced that one of those pillars in our church had died. Since then, 3 people in our ministry have passed on, and to sit with that. And I think we have to have room and latitude in our faith to really sit with that. I think that we have too much vain optimism. We've in our extreme prosperity message, in many respects, have not prepared people for seasons like this, for the full spectrum of our faith. Yes, things work out. God causes all things to work together for the good of them who love him and are called according to his purpose. But the Bible also leaves room for frustration. It leaves room for lament, those times where things did not work out the way we expected them to work out. And I had to sit with that. I mean, we started this COVID journey, this quarantine journey, with, for me, in many respects, an unanswered prayer. As we kicked this off the first week, the first call I got was the antithesis of my prayer. My prayer was, Lord, just let them see it. Let their eyes behold what they've helped to build. And the first, again, call I got was that someone passed on. Since then, 3 people have passed on. And it's disorienting. We have to sit with that as a community in many respects. With faith, we can hold both faith and uncertainty in tandem. There's a passage where the man looks at Jesus and says, I believe, but help my unbelief. And we have to wrestle with that. There are times where we have extreme belief and faith in God, but there are still parts of us that have to wrestle through the human experience. And when I look at the entire community, it reminds me of a phrase out of Aviva Zornberg's Bewilderment, which is a commentary on the children of Israel coming out of Egypt bondage and going into the promised land, a familiar narrative. But often in between Egypt and promised land, where we're oppressed and where we ultimately want to be, there's a wilderness in between. God rarely takes us from Egypt to the promised land without a wilderness in between. And quite honestly, if I was given a prophetic forecast, I would say, for the most part, we are in a bit of a wilderness. God is providing, God's making a way, but the reality is we have to look forward. And here's Aviva Zornberg's commentary on these people that were journeying in the wilderness, and I think it parallels our own time. She says, long before there was the death of their bodies in the wilderness, there was first the death of their imagination. When they began to look back and cry out for Egypt, it got so bad and so uncertain, they said, we desire to go back to the good old days, as opposed to looking forward with a sense of prophetic possibilities, they cried out for things to be the way they used to be. And I want to say this, and I want to be crystal clear about it. I don't know that things will go back to the way they used to be. I don't know if the economy is going back to the way they used to be anytime soon. And I think this, I'm pretty sure now at this point that Nipsey was right. This is not a sprint. It's the marathon. And as of now, the marathon continues. This is going to be a bit protracted. While we're going to get through this, we will die in the wilderness or die in transition if we look back over our shoulder and cry out for the good old days. We've got to look ahead and begin to think of prophetic possibilities. Let me bring that down to earth. Another phrase for that is, as leaders, we have to begin to incorporate, and this is the beauty in this, as I see the councilmen coming together and these brilliant Black leaders coming together, we are incorporating what's called imaginative leadership. We're not looking back, but we're looking at, the schematic with brand new eyes, saying, God, how will you lead us? How will you guide us? How will we, as Dr. Hardy said, you implore our creativity, and not only our creativity, but also community. We've been talking for years, and I'm just going to talk about the elephant in the room, the fractured nature often of African-American leadership in this city and in many cities. But there's an opportunity here for us not only to use mental ingenuity and creativity, but to come together as a community, practice a little bit of what Bishop Tudu calls Ubuntu, considering one another and realizing that there is no me without you, there is no you without me. If we can pull together, there are significant possibilities ahead of us. I'll close with this because I think I'm over my few minutes, but you knew that I'm a preacher. There is one of my professors at Duke, in fact, the Duke Dean of Divinity School, Greg Jones, I love the way he said it. He says, we lead in America like the game we love, like football, where we make incremental progress toward the ultimate goal. And as we make incremental progress toward the ultimate goal, people cheer. If we lose any progress or go backwards, people jeer and boo. They become depressed unless we're making progress toward the ultimate goal, which is the touchdown. He said, but leadership, and particularly in this hour, is not like football. It's more like soccer. When you come up against opposition in soccer and the entire field is blocked, your movement is blocked. They do something outlandish and in many respects paradoxical. They don't push forward, but they turn around and kick the ball backwards. And in soccer, kicking the ball backwards is not a loss. It's called reframing the field. And I think we have to view this not only as a deficit, but we have to view this as an opportunity. We're not losing ground if we do this the right way. Though we can't gather in the same way we once gathered, though we have to use mental ingenuity and spiritual ingenuity, please understand we're not kicking the ball backwards and losing ground, but we're reframing the field. If we navigate this properly, we can get around some of the opposition that's been before us. And so one of the things we have to do as community leaders and as spiritual leaders is raise people's expectation and prod, poke, push them to, as Dr. Hardy said, employ creativity like we've never employed it before. And I would add also community.
Thank you, Pastor Wayne. Those were powerful words. I think we could have listened to you for another hour here today. Thank you for driving the science, giving us constructive.
Councilman, we lost you on audio.
Am I still here? Can you hear me now? Oh, okay. So thank you for those great words. I'm certainly going to you. I'm not going to. It's not lost on me that you quoted Nipsey Hussle, as you are one of the few pastors that can do that. We know that you are relatable and current and right on point. And you mentioned reframing the field, right? And I think that you guys, we didn't rehearse this, we didn't set this up, but it's a great setup for my next guest, and that is Dr. Kimberly Johnson from Long Beach Unified School District, who is listed on the website as their equity officer, but has a impressive background in education. This entire panel is exemplifies education and the importance of education and community. So thank you so much for Dr. Johnson for joining us. Not only are you an employee of Long Beach Unified, I know you have raised your children in the district. Your son is doing some great things. I remember him coming to volunteer on some of our community service projects a few years back. Tell us about the importance of family and education. Tell us a little bit about what Long Beach Unified is doing to reframe that field. How are we coping with distance learning, and what does the future look like for Long Beach Unified and parents dealing with school-age children today?
Thank you so much, Councilman Alston, and thank you to the committee for inviting me to be a part of this outstanding panel. I'm going to talk a little bit about, give a little overview of what Long Beach Unified School District is doing to address the educational needs of our students during this pandemic. I do have to say that our district has really set the standard for uncharted territory. As many have said before, this is totally new for all of us. So one of the things that we have started, are my slides available? Slides? I don't see them. Okay, I can just, okay, there we go. Nope, not that one. There we go. Awesome. Okay. Can't see them. Can you put, yeah, there we go. Okay, you can go ahead and advance to the next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things that the Long Beach Unified School District has done is customized an online process, and this has been going since March 23rd. The district has put together a very comprehensive online process for home learning. Grades began on April 23rd. We didn't start initially providing grades. We just wanted to get our students kind of accustomed to this new way of thinking and new way of doing things. And we also have allowed for makeup work prior to that needed to be done that hadn't been done prior to March 13th. So that was a great thing that we've done to make sure that our students are on par and are going to be successful. The district distributed over 11,000 Chromebooks. Hotspots as well for students who didn't have internet. Our teachers are providing virtual office hours. And we also have provided Khan Academy, which has been going for a long time, but all of our students are connected to Khan Academy. And Khan Academy is basically an opportunity for our students to get additional support for the learning opportunities, along with the Lexia Core 5, specifically for our elementary students, where they can log on and get support for their home learning opportunities. Next slide. So our special education program is going strong. Our goal is to provide equitable and meaningful access to the learning opportunities and services provided. So our special education staff are providing virtual teaching. They're also providing teaching telephonically, providing video conferences, and also printed materials are being offered. IEPs are in full effect. Our teachers are working with students to make sure that their goals and related services are being provided during this time. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier some of our communication methods, phone calls, virtual office hours, but home visits. So these are some things that we don't always do, but we have found that doing these home visits for our students that we've noticed that are kind of dropping off, that aren't necessarily logging in, some of our teachers and principals and counselors have been going out to the homes to find out exactly, what's going on with the kids and, what kind of support they may need. Email is also an opportunity for our students and teachers to communicate. We have several communication platforms. Our district website, which is full of various resources and opportunities for students and parents to connect. And I have resources at the very end of this presentation. We also have one of our assistant superintendents, she's actually over special education, that routinely provides student videos so that our students can feel connected and supported during this time. Because as Dr. Hardy mentioned, many of our students some are happy, some are not happy, and they want to go back to school. So they really need that connection. Our deputy superintendent is also providing community videos and keeping our parents as well as our students and staff updated on the changing times. We also have individual school websites where principals and counselors and teachers are providing opportunities for our students to be connected and providing information for them. One of the things that our staff and students, or staff and principals and counselors are doing, especially for our class of 2020 students that will not be graduating in the traditional manner, they're going out and connecting with the families. I've seen, I don't know how many signs on different lawns and in windowsills congratulating our students, because they're having a hard time with the fact that there's no prom, there's no traditional graduation. So we're trying to connect with them as best as we can under these terrible circumstances. Next slide, please. So some more supports that our district has implemented. We have meal service, breakfast, lunch, and supper at 34 of our school sites. And these meals are distributed between the hours of 11:30 and 12:30 every day. We also have our Coalition of Involved African American Parent weekly webinars, and these are specifically for, obviously, our African American parents, every Thursday from 2:30 to 3:30. And this is an opportunity for us to connect with our coalition parents. A few weeks ago, I was sent information and a request to do these and different topics that our parents were interested in learning about. So we conduct these every week. We have also acquired a partnership with Azusa Pacific University. One of our former coalition families has a student that went through Long Beach Unified, and she has coordinated with her peers at school a letter writing campaign. So these are other opportunities to connect with our families so that they can feel connected and feel a little supported in a different way. We also have Parent University through the district that provides technical support. We have a couple of partnerships that have started with various healthcare agencies and other local, regional, state, and federal agencies, one of which is the Mayor's Fund for Education. And this just started, and they will be delivering diapers and hygiene products to our district warehouse, and they will be distributed at many of our meal service locations. And we'll have more information on that in the coming weeks about where they're going to be and how to access. And then we have a brand new program that I didn't know about, the Long Beach Challenge. And this is where athletes from across Long Beach are providing auction items for the public, and they're going to be auctioned off, and they're trying to raise $100,000, and that money is going to be donated to the COVID-19 resources in Long Beach. Next slide, please. Summer activities. So we will have summer school, virtual summer school. High school will begin June 22nd through the 24th. Please make sure to sign up at your school site. We will also have credit recovery and original credit courses available for students. And as always, we will have extended school year for special education students online. And this year is something a little different. We're going to offer online intervention opportunities for our K through 8 students. Childcare will also be available for essential workers and their children. There will be a small preschool program available through our Head Start program as well this summer. Next slide. So, next school year, I know a lot of you are wondering what's going to happen next school year. What are we doing? The school year is still scheduled September 1st through June 16th. And like Dr. Hardy said, will not be business as usual, but we will adapt. So basically, we are going to follow the lead of our state superintendent. The district is working very closely with the state superintendent and other state agencies. And above all, we want to make sure that our students are safe. So we will be following all of the necessary guidelines to provide a continuum of learning opportunities. So there'll be social distancing, assuming that will still be in effect. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are stories that we have available in our school district that can take you directly to the website, the links on the Long Beach Unified School District website. Is there a way to post this for families? Anyone? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. So in closing, my suggestions for the educational health of your students is to make sure if you're having trouble, make sure you reach out to your school your teachers, your counselors. We are here to help and support. This is a very different and changing times that we are having, and we are really working hard to make this as smooth as possible transition for our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. That was a very resourceful presentation. You left nothing to really ask in terms of information out there, and I think our school district is doing an amazing job. That's the rice cooker. I'm proud to be Long Beach Unified. Send my kids through that amazing district. There's some poll questions that have been posed to those participating. I just want to run through the results real quick. The very first one was asking, how has COVID-19 paper at home orders and social distancing orders created more or less stress or anxiety on you personally? 53% of the respondents say more stress and anxiety on them, and 41% say less, and 6% say unsure. Then there was another poll question. How important is it to be connected to your church or spiritual community during this time? 55% of the respondents said yes, it's very important. 27% said it's important. 9% said somewhat important, and then there was really no respondents after that. And then, so I guess as we segue to our next guest, prior to that, we want to give you another poll question. Do you feel like you are properly equipped and informed to assist your child with online schoolwork during this time? And then there's 4 responses. Yes, very well informed and equipped, somewhat informed, and not at all informed. So please answer that question. Again, type in your questions, participate in the polling. We want to hear from you, make this as interactive as possible. And our next guest is somebody who I have known for close to 20 years. He is someone who has committed his entire adult life to education, personal achievement in education, but also the education of others, starting out as a classroom teacher and working his way up to now being the Director of Student Life and Development for Cal State Long Beach. This is that guy who, if your child, particularly minority children or students, are interfacing with Dr. John Hamilton. He's also a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I can tell you when you have alphas together, good things happen. And so welcome, Dr. John Hamilton.
Thank you very much. Just one correction. I don't want to take somebody else's title from Long Beach State, so I'm the Assistant Vice President.
Well, that's a better title, a bigger title, and my apologies. You're onward and upward, my brother. So we understand that there is and has been a declining since Prop 209, declining numbers of African American college students on the campus. I would love for you to kind of talk about that, where that's at, and where you see that going, and just tell us how Cal State Long Beach is dealing with COVID-19 and plans to adjust, the adjustments being made for the upcoming semester.
Right. So as you said, Prop 209, so it made a devastating effect for students of color, but particularly African American students, right? And so when we look at Long Beach State and we look at the city of Long Beach, who has a population of 12% African American, and at Long Beach State now, as of fall 2019, this past fall, we have 3.7% of African Americans on our campus, and so we have about 37,000 students on our campus right now. So out of that 37,000, we have 3.7%. So with that, Prop 209 designated that there were no more affirmative action or designations to support or help students of color into college. And so it almost kind of eliminated the diversity or equity that we have on our college campuses across the state or country, really. And so what we've been doing at Long Beach State, we've been doing a few different things now. So since I've been in this position for 2 years, and so we have seen an increase in African American students completing the application and being admitted. The problem we have is having our African American students who have been admitted to actually enroll into the university. So the number of students who have applied has gone up. The number of students of African American students who have got admitted have gone up. But the number of students who actually say, yes, I'm coming to Long Beach State, that's gone down because they have so many different offers across the board from either some of our sister campuses, UCs, or out of state. And some of that is maybe on us because we offer, although we give our admission letters around May 1st, we ask students to tell us. A lot of other colleges or universities are having their admits offers a little bit earlier than ours, and some of them are offering their financial packages a little bit earlier than ours. And so we are currently working on that now as a university to change some of those things around for the campus. In addition to that, we do have some programming on our campus from the Education Opportunity Program, which is EOP. Some of you may be familiar with that, which is a state program. And so that is for our historically underrepresented, low-income and first-generation students. So we tend to serve our African-American students through that program. We have an Office of Multicultural Affairs, which we do have a center, a Pan-African Center. that we try to do our best to do programming in that direction, but that we have low staff in our Office of Multicultural Affairs, so that is still growing. And then we have other programs like the Men's Success Initiative that concentrates on young men of color, and we have our Women's and Gender Equity Center that also has different programming. One programming called Sister Friends, and then we have a women's collective that we just started under the leadership of Pamela Lewis, who is a Long Beach native as well. And so we're doing some things, and so under my 2 years, we've seen a little growth, not as much growth as we want to see, but we are doing some work. One of our biggest programs that I would like to mention is our CSUOB Village. And so that is a collaboration with some of our Long Beach, Compton, Carson, or South Bay, I should say, ministers who have come together. And so we work with them in their youth groups and try to tap into some of those. And majority of the pastors that are involved with that are African-American congregations as well. And so we have been trying to do some things to increase that number. We hope with fall 20, this incoming class, we hope to see some the numbers increase, but we're not sure because of COVID-19, because we know that across the nation we're looking at seeing a third of the incoming student college population drop by a third, and so we will see what that lies ahead for us. As far as what we're doing on campus, as you know, the chancellor from CSU announced for our fall that we will be doing some alternative instruction. So that means a lot of our classes will be remote or online. And so it's very important that for our students, especially our African American students, that when we talk about the digital divide, this is a great time for us to start looking into that a little bit more closely, because COVID-19 has really exposed some of those things that we talked about, the digital divide. I know that Dr. Johnson, she talked about the Chromebooks or laptops they've given out. We've also given out Chromebooks on our campus, but and a lot of districts and universities across the nation have done the same. But what we're coming to find out, sometimes those Chromebooks or laptops don't have the capacity that we think they should have as far as for college students. We're talking about certain programming they may need for the College of Business, for engineering, or for science and things of that nature. So we're looking into the college campus is looking into expanding the Chromebooks and the memory that they have on there, so they can add more software to those computers. We have a designated hotspot on our campus for students if they don't have any internet on campus. So we have we designated a couple of our parking lots for that, and that probably be expanding for the fall as well. In addition to that, we have I talked about the hotspots, and then for this past spring, we have given our students the opportunity to choose between credit and no credit classes. So a lot of our students have we're having a lot of anxiety about receiving the letter grade and, this transition to remote and the alternative instruction. So then they have the choice of getting credit or no credit for their courses. And so that won't be a ding on them for moving into their major, and nor would it, if they're on our campus for a grad program, that won't hurt them as well. And so the campus have done some things. We're still doing virtual programming. If you follow me on social media, you'll see we're doing a lot of programming for our students, and we're also doing our academic advising. And so we will be starting off this summer where we do our orientation for incoming freshmen. That also will be online. And so a lot of the faculty and the staff have been working tirelessly to bring this plan together to make sure all students are able to access online, to make sure they get the courses that they want and that they need to start off the semester and also to graduate. I think that's about it, and any question that you have.
And I do have a quick follow-up question. What does the fall enrollment look like, particularly for African Americans? I'm not sure if you addressed that.
Oh, you're talking about for fall 20?
Yes.
So we haven't gotten those numbers yet. We won't have the numbers for African American or all groups until August or early September.
Okay, we'll be paying attention. And,
yeah, feel free to contact me about anything via email or phone. It doesn't matter. Just I have that information ready.
And I think it's always important to note that, Long Beach is very unique as a community because we do have the college promise, and that is a pipeline to help our students, all students in Long Beach Unified, go through City College as well as Cal State Long Beach, and it's a model for many others. I did see a couple of questions, and I want to loop back, and this came from the chat room, a question regarding, do we have any information on how many students have not logged on or ever connected with the district during this closure? Are we dealing with that number at all, Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, I answered that question, and at this point, we are at 95% of students that have logged on over these last 7 weeks. Yeah, we're shooting for 100%.
Okay,
So
I
that's
also want to
come in handy.
thank you. 95% is encouraging. That's really good, and we appreciate all the great resources happening at Long Beach Unified. There was for Long Beach Unified or for Cal State Long Beach, did students receive the opportunity to apply for a grant that were affected by COVID-19? Are there any grant opportunities available for students?
So for Long Beach State, we, as you know, we were given the funding for the CARES Act. And so, and a lot of that funding went towards our enrolled students on our campus. And so if you are enrolled at a college campus, I'm pretty sure, and somebody on here correct me if I'm wrong, your campus should have been allocated a certain amount of funding. And so we have sent out funding to almost 90% of our students who have submitted a FAFSA, previous FAFSA or a FAFSA for this upcoming year. And so they have been received their funding anywhere from $1,000 to $250.
Thank you for answering that and addressing that so quickly. I mean, that has been okay. So I wanted to just address and loop back Dr. Hardy, our very first speaker. You gave an amazing presentation. You talked about the importance of therapy, and I guess the question that comes to mind is, oftentimes, and I know that a lot of us are doing it. We're addressing, we're sheltering at home, and so we're doing more push-ups and curls, and we're walking more and biking. There's a lot more physical exercise. What tips would you give to families and those out there watching about exercises for mental health? Or is there such a thing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's such a thing. Remember how we used to say that a mind is a terrible thing to waste?
Yes.
If we remember that what we think determines what we do also impacts what we think. And so spending time with our children, one of the main things that I find is turning off the television. I mean, we've all been impacted and want to get as much information as possible, but it's really a good time to turn off the television and to begin to figure out what's in your own mind, what you think, what you care about, because we've gotten so in tune to paying attention and getting all of our information outside of us that we rarely spend the time to get quiet and try to hear what's coming out of us, what's already been put in us, what we already possess, what is ours. And we're so focused on getting all of our information from outside. So I would just say, as a family, spending quiet time, spending time together. It doesn't take a lot of time, but just time to exercise your mind. Just maybe a simple question is, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? What matters to you? To ask each other and just to spend time. Do read. There's a tremendous amount of information online right now. So I think one of the big things is really an easy thing is just to get quiet and to hear what's in your own mind. And then going to therapy, like I said, some of the smartest people, some of the happiest people, some of the healthiest people I know, they take advantage of therapy. And so this idea that Black people don't get help is untrue. I don't know. I hope I answered your question.
I think you did, and then I had a second part to that, and then I want to segue to Pastor Cheney and ask a very similar question, but in terms of spiritual health as well. But what about access to mental health? Is that available? What about if you don't have health insurance? Is access to mental health available to most residents, particularly of color?
When we think about traditional therapy, it is a barrier if you don't have insurance. And so even with Medi-Cal, Medi-Cal is a tremendous job of making therapy available for people who traditionally don't fit into or may not have the same economic bracket. We think about therapy as a leisure or something that only certain people are entitled to. There are programs. I think we're going to have to be a little more creative about that. Traditionally, we think of the traditional model. You call up your insurance company, you get a referral, and then you can ask for what you want. You can ask for a person of color. You can ask for a person with a spiritual background. You can ask for a Christian. So one of the things is just to be more empowered. When you call up, you ask for what you want. And if they can't give you what you want, you tell them how they go about trying to get it. But it's available. I think we're going to have to be a little more creative and just to begin to let each other talk about what's really going on and to recognize that it's a strength to reach for help and not a weakness. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yes, and I think I mentioned when I talked to you the other day, I work with mental health providers. I think we can work together on helping that access, but also just to keep in mind the trauma that this COVID-19 is causing on our community as a whole, but the vicarious trauma on mental health providers as well. So, Pastor Cheney, same question kind of goes to you in terms of we've been exercising our physical and now we've learned how we can exercise our mental health. What can we do to exercise our spiritual health as a community?
Well, thanks for the question. There is so much we do in that area, but I think it's important for us to lay a proper foundation. And I feel like, to a certain degree, and this can be argued in the Western world, we're so dichotomous. We break things into compartments as opposed to considering how all these things are integrated together. And for me, as part of, as the writer says, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in good health as your soul prospers. And that is a fluid statement. It's a fluid blessing, but you hear named in that you would prosper and be in good health, but then also as your soul prospers. And so the totality of the individual is taken into consideration. And I think the beauty, Daniel Pink, and I'm going off script a little bit, wrote a book several years ago called A Whole New Mind. And basically he forecasted sort of where we are now. He said we're beyond the information age and we've moved into what he calls the conceptual age. And the people that are going to lead the way forward, particularly as it relates to the job market, are those and who really resonate with people are those who are able to integrate all of these things, together for the spiritual leader to show the importance of mental health. And so to echo again what Dr. Hardy says, it's vitally important, not only for our congregants, but for us as leaders. So we've made it a priority to have, again, Antioch counseling ministry with licensed psychologists, psychiatrists, clinicians. So we want to model that this is important. It's a resource for us. Now, we can't do it ongoing forever, but at least the first 4 sessions are on us, and then we try to place you in a long-term relationship. But as it relates to spiritual development, we can't leave that out of the equation. We're wired in many respects without the spiritual dynamic. There is a void that's there. And so while many people are moving away from, or in this crisis, are navigating it in their own way, I think one of the significant things that's emerging from this crisis is that people are seeing the superficial things in life that we use to pacify us just aren't they just aren't satisfying. And they're beginning to ask the question, what brings ultimate satisfaction? And again, the local ministry has offered so much, but one of the things we've been passive about offering is true spiritual health, true encounter with the living God. And now there's a hunger in people because that's what we're wired for. And we want to facilitate that. And I want to speak to the church community now. I don't think that we should miss an opportunity while we're taking care, meeting needs, while we're feeding individuals, while we're providing mental health resources. You hit it right on the nose. We need to also be unapologetic about people's spiritual wiring and help facilitate that encounter with God. So a few things I think are significant in this time. We need to focus in on, what matters most once again. Without all the pomp and circumstance, we've been reduced to a good place. What matters most? Purity of relationship and encounter with God, authentic relational encounter with God. We have to get that there and prioritize that. People are so forgiving right now about the production quality. Some of the largest churches in the country, the pastor's giving the message from his home office. And so it's a great time to really prioritize what matters most. Relational encounter with God, prioritization of, people and their needs, mentally, physically, but as you mentioned, spiritually. There is no replacement for that. And I think we have to, again, open up the lines of communication for that need specifically. Last piece, as it relates to what's missing and how we have to reframing the field, we have to learn as leaders to scratch the itch that people have. People right now are lonely. And so we've got to figure out how to be smaller and broader at the same time. How do we, close the gap and give everyone a personal touch? Many have done it different ways. Some have gone to Zoom. We have taken, 70 of our top tier leaders and broken up our role, which on there is a few thousand people that have come through there in the last few years and would say that they make Antioch their church home. Now we don't see all those folks on the weekend, but all of them matter. And so we've taken that list, and every single person, I said to them when this started, I'm not the pastor. I need you to help now pastor the flock of God. And so we're becoming smaller, more intentional, because people have all sorts of needs while we're attempting to reach more people in the broad sense using the social media platform than we ever have before. So we were trying to scratch that itch of loneliness. The lack of broader support is a challenge. With everyone universally stressed out, the peripheral emotional support is missing. The friend that you normally call for some encouraging words, he's stressed dealing with his own stuff. Your mentor may be stressed out right now. And so there is a need for the supplementary work that Dr. Hardy talked about. But then finally, where because we're not able to gather in person, there's a challenge as it relates to accountability. And I'm finding people beginning to slip back into patterns, unhealthy patterns that church community helped them out of. And so we're now rethinking, re-strategizing. How do we, on this digital platform, begin to build community on 3 tiers? And I'll write a book about it later. So I'll give you the short version. There's authoritative accountability. who are the people in our life? Church provides all three of these in one community, but we've got to figure out and reframing the field how to give people authoritative accountability. And what I mean is not a heavy-handed, tyrannical authority, but there should be people in our life who we don't want to embarrass because we're attached to them, our names attached to them. People who, if we wanted to go left or wanted to go right, and they told us to consider going left, either we halt our movement or slow our steps. Those seasoned elders, and elder is not just age, that's part of it, but it's also the wisdom of community. We need to figure out a way to graft that back into, again, that accountability and relational accountability. These people that see you on a regular basis and and are able to check in on you to see where there's been a slip in your morale, a slip in your standard. You're not talking about your wife in an honoring way, and they're watching that decline. They can catch it before it becomes more pronounced. And then finally, there's intimate accountability. We've got to find a way to really create those safe spaces where there is greater disclosure and where people are able to bare their soul without judgment. And so we don't have all the answers. Those are the human needs. And we're creating now strategies, and we'll share with you as we continue to create strategies to check those boxes.
Discussion, good interaction, and from the public and the community. Great comments out there. And it looks like there's quite a few people paying attention to the great information, the resources, insight, and perspective that you all are bringing to the table. And again, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, the just pure qualifications that are before us on this panel. Collectively the many years of experience, but also the formal education that really exemplifies the best of our community, but not all of our community, because here in Long Beach we have a deep bench. That's one thing that I can say that I'm very proud of in terms of organizational support, but also individuals who are contributing and doing great things here in the city of Long Beach. It makes me proud to be a representative of our community, to serve on the city council, to be able to make policy, but to call each and every one of you all partners in the communities around the things that matter most in our community. And so with that, I know we have only a couple minutes left. I could go back another round and talk to each one of you all, because the knowledge that you guys are sharing with us is just so great. But I'd like to do something a little in these calls. I'd like to ask that we all just indulge our Pastor Cheney for a closing prayer for our collective. Sir.
Okay, you broke up a little bit. Is it time to close, you mentioned?
Yes, time to close, and I would ask that you lead prayer as we close. Pastor Cheney. Oh, you know what? I want to turn it over to Councilman Richardson before we close with prayer.
Okay.
That's okay.
Thank you, Councilman Austin. This was an incredible conversation. We paid attention to every word. I have to tell you, I'm incredibly proud of our community right now. You think of 88 cities across Southern California, and 88 cities in LA County, 191 cities in Southern California. I think you'd be hard pressed to find this level of coordination and unity and proactivity in how we're addressing this COVID-19 pandemic from the city standpoint, and also from our diverse community. You have our education folks represented, who gave tremendous insight into the decision making in K-12 and at Long Beach State. Insights into what we can expect as the African American community. You have Dr. Hardy shared really fantastic words of wisdom and coping skills. And so we thank you, Dr. Hardy. I think a lot of us are going to be calling on you for your wisdom and advice in the time to come. Pastor Cheney, I have to tell you, there was no need to give you talking points, a script, or anything. You speak directly from the Spirit, and I think that really truly came across. My wife and I truly enjoyed your message, and I think, and I pray that it impacted the lives of the people paying attention. Councilman Austin, you did a tremendous job with moderating this conversation. I want to say thank you. You came with it. You brought the utmost professionalism. You were well researched. Your presentation was to the standard that Long Beach deserves. I want to, before we go to this closing prayer, I want to just say to both Melissa Morgan and Matthew Hamlet, who've played really key roles in organizing these discussions. I want to say thank you. Keep up the good work. We're really proud of you for what you've been able to do. And this is not the end of the conversation. The city has an ongoing series of focus groups where they're taking recommendations. What we're going to do as a committee, we're going to take the perspectives and ask every panelist of the last 2 meetings to contribute recommendations to the city's process. So you had recommendations from health and economics. Today we had education, faith, and family. And so we look forward to bringing all that together to have one unified white paper. Maybe we call it the black paper, not quite sure, but one unified list of recommendations. That said, this will be posted online when we conclude. That's the rest of my comments. I thank you, and I pass it over to Pastor Wayne Cheney.
I want to just do a couple quick things. First of all, I want to thank the 2 councilmen for coming together, Councilman Richardson and Councilman Austin. This is a model of what can be done in our city when we come together. And I want to thank you for your leadership in that as we look to you to lead us in the city. Thank you so much for that. Then also want to make people aware of the food pantry. Again, another initiative from Councilman Richardson, the Long Beach Center for Economic Inclusion, sprung into action and is meeting needs right away, right now. As we speak, every district in need has a food pantry, free food. You can go to lbcei.org. Yes, lbcei.org to get more information on that. And so, Lord, we thank you. In the words of the vintage hip hop poet, Brother Ice Cube, today was a good day. I thank you for the wisdom of this panel. I thank you for the engagement of this community, but most of all, I thank you for giving us hope and the prophetic possibilities. We don't look back crying out for days gone past. We lift our heads to new realities. While the field is being reframed and it appears as if we're going backwards, there's an opportunity for us to advance like never before. Now we pray that you give us in-depth insight and divine wisdom into your ways that we'll know how to proceed. We declare not based on what we observe with our eyes, but based on prophetic hope that the greatest days are not behind us, but they are before us. Now it's in your matchless name. We believe these things to be done. And it's in the name of Jesus Christ we pray. All those who agree with the prayer said amen.
Amen. Thanks, folks. Have a good evening.